welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain. On today's episode, we'll be discussing The Flood. We saw this production at the Queens Theatre Hornchurch on the 10th of March 2023. This world premiere production of an extraordinarily tender and timely play, written by Vicky Donoghue and produced by Queens Theatre Hornchurch, is a play about calling a place a home and what that really means. So Stephen, what's it all about?
January 1953, a party. Dancing swing to the big band. Opening night of the War Memorial Hall, Canvey Island. The storm approaches. A group of friends will need to put aside secrets in order to survive. Cut to 60 years later, and the group return to the War Memorial Hall for a ropey-looking buffet, 50s records, and a tea and dance to remember events from the past. Fast forward 40 years, and descendants return to the War Memorial Hall one last time to make sense of what happened to them.
But first, our post-show opinion!
It's a little long-winded.
A good concept, but some debris needed removing. So with all that said, let's set the scene. Okay, Stephen. So, would you like to describe the set this time?
Well,
I'm relinquishing all control.
now of course I will gladly describe the set. The set shares in each of the time periods. What? Oh! No, you're doing a share impression.
The set shares.
Set shares. Oh! Pack it in. Just eat your biscuit and shut up. Keep dunking it. So as we take to our seats in the audience, we are presented...
In the auditorium.
In the auditorium. We are presented with a lovely little set where it is in a community hall or a... Well, it's a community hall, isn't it,
Yeah,
basically,
it is.
on
Centre.
Canvey Island in Essex.
Yeah.
And to stage left is a door and two windows, which leads towards the outside. And to stage right, there's a tiny little... Well, it's not a tiny little door, it's just a door. And that leads into like a kitchenette area. At the very front of the staging, we have what appears to be like a bridge from the stage up to the front of the auditorium, bypassing a couple of rows of front
it's like
seats,
bypassing the front 5 rows or whatever.
which was going to be used as some sort of
It's like
bridge
the main
later on.
concourse into the entrance. And
That's right,
to the
yeah.
stage.
So that was used later on, but it just brought the stage out into the audience later on. And at the edging of the staging, where random just washed up pieces. So I think there was a trolley, there was a lampshade, there was all sorts
road sign, there was
all sorts of crap, debris. But that was quite useful for making the edge of the stage and breaking it off.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Then to the very back of the stage in the hall space was it was up on a slight raise
Yes,
at the
it
back.
was, yeah.
And in the centre of that was like an old-fashioned theatre staging. So it's panelled walls to the stage, and at the back of that was a red velour backdrop
Yeah,
curtain.
and it's what you see a lot at community centres where they have a bit of built stage for
Like an
a
old-fashioned
singer
staging,
or
yeah.
somebody that's entertaining the crowd or whatever.
And they did have a piano guy up there.
Yeah, they did.
Later on.
They normally, that's pretty traditional in a lot of rural community centres where you've got things where there's got a bit of staging in a corner. There's where you'd have a bingo caller or that sort of
Oh,
it's just
look at that matching there.
just like we knew where we were going with that one.
And a couple of chairs were dotted about
Yeah.
at the front of the stage. Now, the special thing about this stage was, I suppose, 3/4 of it in the centre turned around.
Yeah, so it was on a revolve, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we started in 1953.
Yeah.
The only time that it'll turn around was when it's been rubbished and graffitied over to show the passing of time for 100 years later. That's right, yeah. So that's the reason why certain chairs were positioned in a way so they wouldn't get in the way for the rotating backdrop of the stage, which was quite cleverly done.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's that. Setting the scene.
There we go.
And I managed to do that one okay.
You did well.
I didn't have to do a second take at all.
No, that was good, all in one.
Okay, so this was a new piece of writing, and
Yep.
it had its debut here at the Hornchurch.
Yes, it did.
The piece is split up into 3 sections. We start off in 1953, and these group of young people are having their first dance. There's a few moments of hidden secrets or things that are airing or flowing between each of them because they've all got a story to tell.
And it's very much the calm before the storm as well. It's the start.
It is in a way.
It's like
things are building up and brewing.
not only are they building up on stage, but it's actually the calm before the storm of the floods in Canvey Island that actually killed quite a lot of people, and it was actually quite destructive in its time, I think.
And then the next sequence of events, it moves along to 2013, so 60 years after that, and that is when these same people have aged and they've come back, reminisce about old times, and certain people aren't there anymore. And there's another part of the play which is then fast forwarded again another 40 odd years, where it's 2053.
Yeah.
And this time it's descendants of those. But have you found what you're looking for?
Yeah, well, just basically in the 1953, 2,551 people lost their lives in that initial flood. So that's why sort of the premise of this production probably came about, because it was actually quite a significant sort of flood that happened, and actually there was no emergency planning, and it literally came out of nowhere where they didn't actually expect that sort of flood to happen and cause that much devastation. So yeah, it was written, it was definitely to try and show that history repeats itself. I think that was a lot of the premise of the production, or almost the production was written in a way that it was about the snapshot of what happened before and leading up to the original storm that caused the floods, and then we're fast forwarding to what happened and the fallout after that 70 years later, almost to see the change, and after the loss of one of the friends you see the actual what happens and where it goes to when they regroup and meet back in the same location. And then we're fast forwarding to almost what could be in 2053 if it's happened again. And I think that's almost what it's written about. It's looking at, does history repeat itself almost, and how things mirror, and how friendship groups are very similar or made up, and they're made up of the same makeup of people or friends, and how it can progress.
So we started to understand the dynamic between the characters. So we had a character called Barry. He was the silent type for the first act. He was, for this particular 1953 era.
You've got young Arthur and young Ted.
That's right. Arthur Ted, yes. And young Arthur, who was he interested in? Or who was he dancing with?
Well, he was dancing with...
Well, young B...
It was young Ethel.
Was dancing with young Barry, or was with young Barry.
Yes, and young Ethel was with young Ted.
Arthur, young Ted.
Yeah,
that's right.
But what we soon started to realise that young Midge also played a part in that as well.
And she had a bit of a relationship with young Ted,
even though young Arthur wanted to have a bit of time with young Midge. Young Arthur
it was young Arthur wanted young Ethel.
Oh, that was it.
Wasn't
yeah,
it?
sorry,
yes.
Yeah, it was.
But he ended up dancing with young Barry. So there was a lot of storylines in terms of the potential of what their adulthood life would be like.
Yeah, there were seeds being sown of different relationships and sort of people not necessarily being with the right people, and there was a lot of that sort of.
Or people being pregnant.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So that was an interesting first act.
Well, first part of the first act.
Oh, yes, that's right. And then it cut to 100 years in the future. So the similar characters, once they've left War Memorial Hall, they come back in only as different characters. So young Arthur was then Frank, young Ted became Sid, Pixie Blossom, Barry was Barry again, only this time he spoke.
Yeah.
And there was Mia. So they were potentially just kids in the future having distant connections.
Yeah,
from
mirroring
the
sort of
53
style of the 53 area.
Yeah.
The history repeats almost.
And the scene revolved around, and it was very dark. It was glum. It was as if it was on the edge of being flooded again.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose
it was a no-go zone, really. It was like,
but they broke back in to do a piece of recording or bring back memories or have a drink. It was, I don't know how I felt about that particular scene. Although what I would say is it kept the energy and it kept the pace.
Yeah, definitely. And it actually had probably more pace than other scenes.
Yeah.
As in, that was the one where it felt more structured.
More
and
things
on
happened.
It.
It was the play was warming up at that
it
point.
was, yeah,
we were getting these young actors really like on point. We were introduced by new characters, so we wasn't ongoing the trend of the other characters and their storylines. So
I felt there was a little bit more dynamic in the links and the storylines and the things that would have, there was a bit more of a twist. It felt more twisted than the rest.
And also
in a way.
dotting, like following the dots in a way.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And then once that scene finished, it then transpired back to January 1953 again, where the continuation of the building up to the flood.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
What happened with the seawater rising and them trying to leave the place. And I think it cut to and from a few times before they eventually had to leave.
Yeah, it did. It was like they got to almost... But Barry was the first one to actually go and see what was happening out there, because they couldn't quite see what was happening. They knew something was coming, but they didn't actually know. So he became the fall guy to go out and see what was going on.
Yeah, and that introduced a little bit of a storyline between, him being deep down inside being a closeted gay man.
Yeah, it did.
But that never really went anywhere as such, because he ended up losing his life.
Yeah. When we say he was the fall guy, he didn't actually return. So you didn't actually ever see him again. So it didn't really have any link to that friendship, really.
With that being said, the play started to take a little bit of a dive when it went into the 60 years...
2013.
So
it was
2013. Years, and we had different cast members play the original younger characters.
Yeah, so the 53 cast basically returned as elderly returnees from after the flood had happened. So basically this was after the destruction and the damage. They'd rebuilt the community hall again. And
we start talking about memories and so on and so forth. So with this, if we talk about the writing here, this is the bit where it really started to slow everything down. Instantly, just the production might as well just stopped for a tea break. I felt at this point. It was quite discerning in a way, because writing-wise, it was probably interesting to see that midway point as to what happened. But in essence, it doesn't work. It didn't work.
Well, no, I think you got the familiarity of the same characters from the 1953 cast as elderly people. However, it just felt that pace dropped that much that you struggled to get on board with the point of that scene.
Yes, it's like
I think that was the key
shoehorning
thing.
In a scene that ddidn't need to be there at all.
Or if you do it, keep the pace up and keep those storylines fast and snappy, and don't... Because I think, personally, it came across with that scene that it had been directed or written in such a way that it was almost made the people on stage come across as older than they actually were. Because that's where I struggled, when it's almost like they were playing a slow ball game. They were passing the ball around, but everybody was quite slow on catching it, and it then just took your attention off, because it didn't feel like pacey to keep your interest.
It took you out of the play.
Yeah,
didn't it?
You thought, where's the link now?
And also, it was very long-winded, because they started rehashing or redoing the lines of the previous scene.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, it's to link it, but you only need to have essences of it. You could link it just
Totally.
by characterization.
Because we've already seen that scene
play out.
moments ago. It's not like
Yeah.
we'd seen it on another series 3 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Where we need to see it. This is we're still in the first act. So
Yeah, we don't
so
need a
you don't
reprise like that.
No, you don't need to do it in the same way. As long as you get the essence of the character, you know who that person
Because who
is.
are they telling it to? Is it the audience or for their benefit when they're
Well,
in
exactly.
rehearsals?
Yeah. Or is it the editor of the person, like the script writer can't edit?
Well,
You know,
I don't
because
know.
I thought, well, I wouldn't say that's a bit harsh. I'd probably say,
Yeah, you bitch.
I mean, for me, maybe it's the fact that this is where restraint's needed. You've got to look at this and go, and also, it feels
Hang on,
like
finish that thought and go what?
you've almost got to sit back and go, does the audience get this, or even get people involved to sit there and have an opinion on that before, if it's, as a writer, if you're sitting there going, this is going on a bit and I don't know where it needs to go, get people to
Get your red pen out
get
and
people
chop.
but get people to help you do that. Get people to sit there but ask them to be honest. Don't ask them to nod their heads and say yes, you've done a good job. Just ask them to be honest, because I felt like there was certain elements in this production where you can say you don't always want to blame it on the edit, but sometimes editing's so important.
There was so much
to
fat
keep
on this.
consistency
It
and
needed
strength
trimming
of
down.
storyline, and I think that's where this fell a little
But
bit.
you could have done that particular era, that section, in a more
Totally.
thought-provoking way. If you know how to do it right,
Exactly.
you know, you didn't have to just copy and paste the previous scene and just get the other characters saying those lines.
Exactly.
And because that's where you start padding and you start losing the impact, because
Really
you're just rehashing them, and it's not as if you're saying it in a different way. Why are you saying it at all?
Well, you can still repeat a scene, but it's got to change and it's got to evolve.
Yeah, but
You know,
if you're
you've
going
got to
back
see a
and,
twist in it.
and thinking back in memory, maybe memories change or whatever.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Maybe they could have a discussion about that never happened, such
No.
and such happened, or you know, there's just ways of doing things which isn't just a carbon copy of what you've previously done.
And like you say, you know, it's like who knows? It's like Chinese whispers. What actually happened to what actually is being replayed, and also
Different terms of events.
what's seen by different perspectives. Because as an audience member, yes, we know there's potential affairs happening, but in the real world and reality, on stage, those people might not have actually seen what the other person thought they were seeing. And that's where you can have a bit of a twist and a turn in things where, you know, 50 years later things can change, you know. And
All that needed to happen, in a way, is instead of having that scene of all you needed was one of those characters to have kept a diary.
yeah,
And for that character to have then had everything in that diary,
Yeah.
for someone then later on to go back, say like the 100-year
Yeah,
one,
yeah, yeah,
to
definitely.
find that old forgotten diary.
yeah,
So it's already been played out,
yeah, definitely.
but then they're cutting back
There's a running
to
theme.
reading the diary to say, oh, look what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened afterwards.
Yeah,
You know.
I do. Yeah, I think that.
But then would I have kept it like 100? Because you could potentially, in that respect, if you like not kept it as 100 but brought it back a bit more,
Yeah,
you know, you could potentially have one of the surviving members there maybe talk about it. It's got to be within the realms of possibility as well.
yeah, of course it has. But it could have been certain items that were salvaged from the flood that have been found like away from that, and you don't know, do you? They could have
Well, exactly. And
found it on the internet that was a log of all the things that happened. You know, they could have modernised it in a way like that, so it wouldn't be a physical item, but it would be spoke about. You know, there is ways to do that. You know.
now there's other parts of the writing here, so it goes back and forth,
Yeah.
and then in the second act we have more of the midsection, which I'm finding a big issue with. It's these scenes with the older actors, and it's just the whole how it's written, which just drags this production down. You know, take them out, it could have been such a snappier piece. However, these scenes, there was an issue where B, portrayed by Vanessa White-Smith, she was saying that she was going to leave to go abroad
Yeah.
after the end of everything, because they still didn't let on that this the love of her life was gay, but it felt like it wasn't necessarily going anywhere. Like, oh, that's it. She's near, what should she be in her 70s, something like that, 60s, 70s, 60 years on, plus 70, 80s. She's going to go abroad and live, but she's still harking back 60 years. And she's not done anything else with her life as such.
Yeah, you didn't. It felt quite linear rather than there wasn't a lot of.
It felt like there was just old characters.
Yeah.
In the new.
Fast forwarded to the end of being old.
Yeah, without any change in their life other than they've deteriorated health-wise.
Yeah, exactly. Just got
old.
Got
other families, other relationships, other things going on. So it's a bit not well thought of, or life hasn't impacted them other than the flood.
And the thing is, when there's such a because what I suppose maybe's missed the point is that there's a lot, not you Stephen, but what the plays missed the point of is the displacement of all those people at that time when the flood happened.
Yeah.
Because they would have been put in a completely different setting, completely different place. So they may not have seen each other till that reunion. But you didn't, like you say, they didn't feel like they'd lived other lives. Because if you've displaced the whole of Canvey Island, which was what happened, and a lot of people died, they would have been living in other places and
Yorkshire, Scotland,
and
or
things
whatever.
Evolve, things change. And
but didn't Midge move away and come back?
Yeah, Midge moved away.
I think she was the only one that did.
But they all would have, in some respect, been displaced. They wouldn't have all ended up in the same friend group, or other influences get involved.
It wasn't even the location; it was the fact that particularly Maisha was with, was most prominent was with B. Was the fact of she was still harking back to Barry being the love of her life when she was in her 20s, but yet she's had 60 years past that. Did she not have a family? Did she not move on?
May not, but when they met, that could have been it could have been explored, but you felt like it was already there when they were on stage, rather than they could have had a meeting that would have actually reignited that, rather than it being almost just spoke about. Yeah, I think that's where the trick was maybe lost, that it could have only been in that room that she'd realised that she's still got a flame, whereas it felt like that was already in the mix. Yeah. Before you'd even started that, and that's where I think where the first 1953 cast, you started to learn tidbits about that. You didn't see a progression in the 2013 bit where you'd see learning more tidbits. You felt like you were just having a reenacting of the 20 years.
In terms of filling back in.
Well, in the 60 years, they've even though they've moved on and they've got new lives, there might still be.
They didn't feel like there was much lives that they delivered.
No, you didn't feel like they'd evolved from that. Yeah. You just felt like they've just paused in time. That's whereas like when you went to 2053, you felt like there was yet again more tidbits to learn, because it's all different dynamics, and I think the dynamics weren't there.
Different characters as well.
But I didn't think there was dynamics in the middle bit, and that's when it feels very difficult to see the need for that scene.
Yes,
and that's why it's hard when you're trying to look at it as a whole piece, when that feels like you've not progressed very far.
It was definitely overwritten with a lot of fat that could have been trimmed down and executed a little bit more tighter and things twisted. Or I feel like it's missing a lot of characterizational stuff that was only hinted at.
Yeah.
Like the issue of Barry being gay, it was hinted at, but that wasn't really anything. It was supposed to be some kind of like hidden secret. But it never really went anywhere or could go anywhere, because the character wasn't allowed to speak.
And it also didn't start early enough.
Well, it was the first scene.
Yeah, but what I mean is he was on his way out the window.
Oh, yeah.
And that was it.
He got to dance with young Arthur, and then he was like holding young Arthur when he was going to leave.
Over long.
Yeah. And that's pretty much all you got. But then they still, in 2013, never expressed what the situation was to be. She was still deluded.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was no chemistry between them anyway.
No.
There's a lot of tension that was just between all of them that just underplayed a lot, and I think that's where this play feels for me. It's very underplayed instead of hitting it, but it did hit it near the end.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
Oh, and the 2053 version, there's like a woman dancing in the background who tragically lost her life allegedly, but to get the impression she was basically the woman in the ring with the long hair at the back, you know, grabby TV. That's the image I got.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
she walked across the bridge, whatever you called it, into the auditorium and walked off sideways.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I've moved my feet so she didn't trip up and go off out the back. Near the end, it was Pixie talking to Sid, because Sid was on the verge of chucking himself into the river, into the water, to take his life again. And that was really dramatic.
Yeah, it was.
And that's where I felt like it was going to end, and that was going to go good piece.
And that was really powerful.
It really was.
And you were, and I think if they'd have explored more of that type of power and that strength of performance, it would have been such a different. We'd have been saying so many things differently about this that we are now. I think there was moments of real promise, and you could see the struggles, and you could feel it.
Yeah, you could feel it.
Feel it.
But then it didn't stop there. It continued a little bit more, because then we went to 2013 again, dragging back down to earth when they were about to leave.
Yes.
Because then they opened up with Blossom and Old Midge again. No, it was Ethel, wasn't it? Ethel and Midge in the 2013 discuss about them having kids or having been pregnant at the time. And that was just very slow paced again. It was like tying up all the loose ends, which you wish just weren't untied or unravelled to begin with.
It felt like we've got to tie them up in each scene in that order because we need to, and it felt a bit too much. And I think the final scene with Pixie singing "Abide with Me."
Oh God, yes.
They referenced it in the 1953 part that young Midge sat on the roof singing "Abide with Me." Oh no, it was old Midge. Sorry, it was Midge in 2013. They referenced that she sang "Abide with Me" on the roof as she waited for the flood and other people, and she didn't really know the words. She didn't know them, so she made them up. Cut forward to the 2053 scene, and Pixie sang the song, sang "Abide with Me." She knew all the words in the right order, didn't miss one at all. Everybody else came out to sing it, but they didn't just sing enough to give the element of it. We sang the whole song with all verses, which then further prolonged the production that you could tell it pushes you over the edge. You feel like this is really going to be the whole song. Whereas it would have been better just to trail it off after the first chorus and just go, that's enough for that scene, and it makes it snappier and sharper, and you don't need the full version because you can sing it. You just have to do enough to give the element of it, because it goes from being really nice and a really nice theatrical moment to, is it time to get my bus yet?
They brought out all the other extras that came up and lined out around the side of the theatre. There were so many at the very beginning that I can't remember why they were there. If they were going to sing the longer version, then they could have done it in more dynamic with them as the backing singers, in a way, sort of washing them away and make
behind the scenes,
do some movement or whatever, so they were like the flood coming in to take her away, dragged her away. Even so she were carted off singing. Yeah. Sort of,
even
not
if
to the full extent of the whole song, but
even if the revolve set kept revolving and they were walking around it singing it to almost show that
people are coming and going.
Well, no, almost like like almost a plug hole effect where there's like the flood is both sides of the coin, really. That they could have, but then everybody had been on the stage rather than it being.
You just want to drain the theatre, didn't you?
Well, no, I wouldn't want to drain the theatre. They just didn't want wet feet.
So, what about the directing then? How did you feel about the directing?
I mean, I think it's a hard piece to direct because if the script is as big as it seems, there's a lot of. It's very wordy, so it's going to take a lot of time to actually rehearse this piece, and a lot of logistical decisions, as in who moves where when and things, and I think that may be. I think
Okay, well, let's move on to something else. I thought the elements with the young people they were
There was a
well
lot
directed.
there was good moments.
It wasn't very innovative or creative in terms of the direction.
There was nothing
It wasn't-
groundbreaking.
No,
you know.
nothing.
But then I could go
spectacular.
back to the writing. If the writer is strict on the script, then there's not a lot more you can do with the work you've got to direct. You know?
I think maybe a dramaturg needed to have been added here, but also I think there needed to be some kind of cohesion between the writer and the director to create something that was a bit more exciting and engaging. And I think just by taking the 2013 elements out, for me, they're the ones that dragged. I don't think, even if you, I don't know, like,
I think
there's no much Duracell. You can't add any more Duracell batteries to make this be any more like energetic and whatever. They just they sapped the life out of that show. It needs just to pay. I'd say like going back to the drawing board and starting again.
But I think we know as well as we've seen productions as well that must have changed and evolved during the rehearsal process. And I think sometimes you have to have that open mind when you're directing and producing theatre. Sometimes things need to change.
Yeah.
Within that process, when you're doing it, you've got to change things. You've got to be honest about the production.
Yeah.
But something you and me said in the car on the way home.
Thank God.
Thank God. No, it wasn't. Well, no, it's thank God when I got my tyre fixed and I actually got home because I didn't get until 4 o'clock in the morning that night.
Yeah, that was a long journey.
It was more what we said was it felt like this production had been rehearsed scene by scene with cast separately.
Yeah, so 2013 was a completely different production slotted in.
But every scene felt each year felt like it had been rehearsed separately. So when it came together, it might not have been seen as how long this production was actually going to be. Because if you've rehearsed each scene and never seen it as one piece right until the end, it's very difficult to change it.
Well, the 2053 era, that seemed a lot more engaging and a lot more... it just felt more cohesive.
It did.
The 1953... like the beginning with the dances, it looked awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
The dancers didn't look right.
No.
People dancing together didn't seem to know what they were doing. It didn't look great, and it started off on like a bad foot.
Yeah, and I think for me, some of the scene changes were very laboured and slow. There was the effect of slow motion scene changes to delay it so that cast could get changed. You can understand that, you know, if you're doing two different scenes where you've got to do this to this, there was a few
went
moments.
Out the windows, the windows instead of the door.
But it was like the movement of chairs into a different position. They were going so slow in a sort of dimly lit stage that it didn't cleanse your palate ready for the next scene. It actually made you feel like, wow, this is going to be a long production.
Is it because it was jarring? Because it was that moving in slow-mo with those chairs the way they did is stylistic.
Yes.
But the piece wasn't a stylistic piece.
No.
In that element.
But also, it wasn't just that. It was like when you actually stylistically move things, which I could understand, you're underwater, or that's probably what it's trying, whatever it's meant to be showing.
A passing of time, I suppose.
Passing time. But when they put the chairs down and the next scene started, there was no sudden, right, off we go again, we're back in the next scene. It was like, let's warm the stage up again, bring the lights up slow. Whereas if they'd done some snap starts where you'd have slow motion, start, off we go, we're in the next scene, that might have had more impact than let's slowly get back into the next scene. And it felt... It just slowed the pace down rather than it being a snap into the next scene. It felt like they went on too long that you were losing interest in the next. It took you time then to get back into it because you were like, oh.
Now,
okay.
do you remember, I think it was in the 2013 era where some of the older cast, they walked in from the sides. It wasn't through the doors in the actual acting section. They walked in through the sides.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, exactly.
What was that about? And where were they going?
That was another scene change. It was a slow-mo scene change.
It was, wasn't it? Because they were like walking off slowly.
Yeah, but it's the same principle. It was all that slow motion stuff. But it started to grate because it was the same sort of slow motion.
But they didn't go off through the door of the stage.
No.
They actually went off the actual set and down the side.
But they were queuing to get off. You could tell that they couldn't just get freely off. They were taking the time because they got to wait for.
It looked like they were going to do the locomotion.
Yeah, and I think that it's very easy to make a scene change or a set change
Look clunky.
look clunky, but when you can see everything that's going off, it slows everything down, and that can hinder a production very easily.
At the very beginning, when they were doing the dancing, and they were having a few drinks or whatever, there were conversations between a couple of them. So you had the Barry and the B, Barry and the B, Barry and B. You had Ted, and there was Arthur and Ethel, and they're all like milling around dancing. But it was sort of sidestepping and then swirling a little bit. But the music could have been a little bit more uplifted. It could have been a bit more like Petticoats and Dreamboats. It could have been a bit more...
It wasn't as much swing. It wasn't swing how you expect swing to be.
No, I mean, it'd be more entertaining if they swung a cat in there. The thing is, it was very dull. It was very boring. That's probably why you've drifted off, because you can't remember because you're bored thinking about it. However, even the conversations when they're dancing and talking over the shoulder about the other person, they could have done a bit more about that. They could have been spread apart and moved around dancing and had a conversation every time they went in. You know, if this was like Pride and Prejudice, think how they spoke and had conversations when they were dancing.
I mean, it felt more like set pieces rather than natural. It wasn't naturalism. It wasn't like... It felt like, oh, we'll walk over here and then we'll do this and then we'll walk over here and then we'll in this dance scene. It felt like everybody will dance sort of facing the audience rather than just being in the space. There was a lot of like positioning almost, rather than drawing focus, like you say, by movements and stop, and it would have made it so much more natural to do it in that way than it came across.
It sounded very muted as well.
Yes,
If you're supposed to be having a good time because it's the opening of the War Memorial Hall, where's all the excitement?
It didn't feel like
where's the
opening.
Party? It wasn't a party.
No.
It felt very. We're not speaking. We haven't got any lines, so we'll just like sidestep.
Yeah, exactly.
I really
Rhubarb. You know.
It really could have been. They could have made more of that and made it more exciting as a dance.
Even things like doing I know.
Hokey cokey.
Well, yeah, it's like but if they'd have done something in that way where they were all together, it might have actually felt more like they were all there for a reason rather than it being very all over the place.
There were certain things that were quite forgettable in this, unfortunately. However, what I do remember is that it was a very slow introduction and build up. Okay, that's fine. But the pace picked up when it went to 2053.
Yeah, it really did.
And then, because you got the character dynamics, there were the young people playing different characters.
The jokes were being thrown right.
Yeah, there was a lot of more jokes, and it was quite good. And the banter between them all, it was fun. It was interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And it did grip me.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting we sort of mention jokes, because for me, when you watch productions like this, and they've got a serious story, or they're talking about loss of life and things like that, the jokes then make the poignant moments almost stronger, because you've got that interaction and the humour between the cast. And this is what we saw with the 2053 cast. They would talk about something sort of which was quite jovial and humorous, and then we'd jump to something that was actually quite serious and poignant. And I think it has more power if you make more of that. And I think that's what that cast got more. You knew there was an underlying, somebody was missing in the group, and you could feel that was there.
But then when it flipped back to 1953, the characters had evolved and they were different things going on again,
Yeah.
they still kept the energy. So when
Yes,
they went
they
back
did.
again, it didn't feel as slow as the very first
No,
scene.
it didn't.
And it was quite
They'd
quick
found
and
their
everything.
pace at that
They
point.
found the pace and stuff. It's just then the direction where it took to go to the 2013 segment is just where it just let everything down, because it's as if everything stopped. It's like sharing a split stage. You've got an actor on one side, an actor on the other. Where you're going to look.
Exactly.
With the 3 different time segments, you're splitting it again into different sections.
Yeah, definitely.
So therefore, one of them, if you're juggling the scenes, is going to end up falling to the floor. And unfortunately, it was that bit that just dropped, because you had the attention on the one side for the 1953, you had the attention on the other side, 2053.
Yeah.
2013, it was a complete miss.
It was. And I think it just became less engaging. And
it didn't happen with different actors as well.
Yeah.
Now, whether they could have got away with the young actors, I don't know if they would have had time, to be honest, dressed differently to portray older people. Would that have worked better, do you think?
I
If
don't
they'd
think
have
it
dressed
would.
elderly?
I don't think it would, because I think that would maybe look. I just think that however they'd rehearse this, I don't know if they did much crossover rehearsal, and I don't know if they worked on those scenes to have that snap and those the 2013. That's the one, into 2013. I think that I just felt like we were watching maybe them being older than they actually were, and I felt that didn't translate very well. It just felt like we were waiting and hanging on every word, but the words weren't.
So do you think that was a directorial?
Yeah, I do sometimes, because you can write it in a script, but if a director sees it and goes, "Come on, we need to just like do this a little bit pacier," or
But if the actors are acting like that, would the director say, "Don't act like that"?
Yeah, I don't see it being unreasonable, but I think it would be a battle to make sure that there's the pace there. But then there was a lot of repetitive text, and we've touched on this already. But
let's not repeat ourselves.
No, let's not repeat the repeat. But I think the director can only do so much with what they've got in the script. If there's no leeway or movement on the script, it might have been difficult for them to have made it any snappier.
Yeah.
And I think.
Now, cutting on right the way to the very, very end of the play, just when I thought it was over, one of the characters got up from underneath, I suppose it was the bridge, so crept back onto the stage, but over the bridge that joined the stage to the auditorium, passing through the front row of seats.
Yeah.
And there was that scene where it was between Midge and Sid.
Yes.
Or Pixie and Sid being the 2053 characters.
Yes.
And there was the dancing girl who died in the flood. That must have been his girlfriend or something in the past.
Yeah. It was.
Like, patterns repeat themselves again, this other figure.
Yeah.
That was quite dramatic. That was quite entertaining.
It was, and it was deep,
I don't mean it entertaining like that, but I mean it was like it was just engaging, because it felt like that's where the climax was. There
was a lot of power and a lot of focus. You were actually fixed on the story at that point.
Yeah, and it was just nice where they did come away from the stage.
Yes.
To come into the audience and mix it up a bit, I suppose.
Yeah, but also I did like the clever use of only using that bridge almost not solely, but mainly at that point, where you didn't really use it much throughout the production.
The only time it was used was when B in 2013 sang that song and walked forward and then off.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she walked past us.
Yeah.
And then again, the same thing happened.
Yeah.
Where he.
Yes.
Was about to commit suicide or jump into the flood or off the bridge.
Pushed to the end. Yeah, basically.
So she in some kind of like
And
twisted interpretive dance way.
Yeah.
She grabbed him and
Yeah.
he reacted as if she'd just come out of the ocean
Yeah.
and pulled him under the waves.
Because B had felt loss and then he had felt loss, so it's the same. It's like the mirror image of the two characters in a way.
Now, he walked past us,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah.
But she did as well, but they didn't walk together.
No.
I just remember her walking off past us really slowly.
Yeah, that was in the first half when she walked off.
No, not B.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
The one from the ring.
Yeah.
And she just looked like she's. It was
think
a bit surreal, like she was.
It was a bit surreal, and I think maybe what we didn't see is the exploration of her as a character, because we only saw her as a mute image. We never heard her speak, so we didn't get that link necessarily that we could have done with, even if she'd have been included in a small scene or a short scene within that. I think we never actually saw that.
And I think we discussed this on the journey back home, the long journey back home.
Yeah, the long journey
where
back home.
I felt that her character should have at least been in the 1953 version dancing.
Yeah.
But whether or not she was meant to have been Blossom
Potentially.
or the young Ethel.
Yeah.
The other woman from
yeah.
Midge, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But again, it left more questions about the characters, and not in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was like, well, who are they? Who are they meant to be? I'm going to sneeze. No, not going to sneeze.
I think I think Sid's character, I mean, the performance of that scene, I think this is where I felt like the writing almost let it down, because that was such a powerful scene, and that was what we thought was the end of the production. Well, I did personally.
I felt that was the end.
It was so powerful and such a moment that easily could have been the final part of the production.
Yes.
And there were the whole other half an hour.
Yeah, I'm right.
Scene.
There was another half an hour.
It was another half an hour.
And they were just tying up other loose ends, and that should have been done the other way round.
Yeah, because this was such a confident, strong performance from the final, like Sid and Midge.
Yeah.
That it felt so strong as a piece that it was such a waste to be put on, not to be the final sort of ending scene.
Yeah.
And you just felt like, oh God, I've got to sit through another half an hour, and it felt like that.
I think that the writer maybe got it into their heads that they wanted to finish on that particular song, so this ending couldn't have been the ending that they wanted. No,
but we've got to tie up all the other loose ends as well, and it's like it was really a little bit like dishevelled. It was a little bit all over. It felt a little bit mixed.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're
here
for the drama.
So we can talk about the acting now.
Yes.
A little bit more in detail anyway, because we've discussed bits. And as we have said, and we don't wish to hurt anyone's feelings, but the younger actors did come across as being very confident and energetic and much more gripping with the text and their characters. I don't know if had we have seen the 2013 crew first, it might have been different.
Yeah.
However, I'm not quite sure. I don't think so. I personally, I thought there were some good performances with the 2013 cast. However, there wasn't. It just didn't work. It
wasn't as stand out as
no. And when we got used to the personalities and the characters with the younger crew for quite a while before they were introduced, they didn't mirror the younger selves.
And I think after seeing the versatility of that younger crew, from going from 1953 to 2053, and
This is why I
almost-
think their versatility. I think they probably could have played the older ones.
yeah,
They could have done this in a
potentially.
Brechtian style
they
or
could have.
whatever. Just
Yeah,
portrayed older
just
characters.
mix it up completely. Yeah,
You don't necessarily have to get same age groups playing the
true.
same age group at the end of the day.
True.
You know, you can.
And maybe that's how they could have played it, and it would have felt more pacier because it would have been them all the time. And
Yeah.
I just felt that they showed their versatility and performance, and how much almost it felt like you could tell they put the hard work in, because they were very keen on it being. They created each individual created separate performances for each era they were in. You felt like they were in a different era. You felt like we were jumping 100 years to this character snapping into something more modern, and you knew where they were.
Yeah.
Wasn't just about the costume they were wearing. You could tell by the language they were using.
Yeah. I'd like to give a shout out to Matilda Ray.
Yeah.
I felt the moment she entered the stage, 1953, she came in with a little berry on. She sat down. She took stage. She took focus.
She did.
There. Her performance throughout was just amazing.
Yeah.
And another couple actually, Mickey Dartford.
Totally.
He gave a really strong performance.
He did. Yeah.
Through both of his characters,
Yeah,
actually,
he really
that
did.
young lad, a bit mouthy, but very more fun and outgoing, very confident, and contrasted with Liam Bull, who was an excellent actor at playing in the 1953, a bit geeky, in a way. It gives me the impression of like a young Clark Kent in a way.
It was the old Superman style. It felt like
you
that.
could see him being like in an office,
Yes.
in a way. Then when he transformed into the 2053 one, it was like that was a big versatility move there,
definitely.
showing a different personality and persona.
Yeah, totally.
So I think for me, those were the standout performances.
Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't feel like the 2013 cast actually was as engaging, even if they had their own separate characters. There wasn't anything there.
No, but and I think this is directing,
this
writing.
is going to sound
we
really,
don't really
nasty
know.
and horrible, but it felt like in the middle of a professional production, they slotted in an amateur dramatics scene.
Even though
that's how it appeared.
That probably wasn't the aim.
No,
and I know, I think that it was very, and it's very difficult to pick out an individual and say it was that was the person that didn't perform well, because they were performing to their best. The problem is, were they hindered by the direction and the script? Because if they'd been slowed down pace wise, these actors are probably capable of a lot more.
Maybe, I don't know. Who can say? It just seemed very jarring. I very struggled, and it was quite frustrating to watch. Well, I can understand why some people left.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the Tech is this?
Come on then, Richard. Tech time.
I mean, this production was lit very traditionally in a way. There wasn't really anything outstanding in the sense of lighting wise. However, it was very much a standardly lit scene. There was a lot of scenes where in the 2053 scene they used a lot of torches and things to show that the place was dank and dreary lit. They shone a lot of light through the windows to put natural light through those windows to show that different times of day, different times of the weather systems outside and stuff like that. There was a lot of sound effects used to show the storm was coming or the storm was going, or there was sirens and things like that. So it was quite traditionally done, really. I mean, I wouldn't say there was anything outstanding, but it worked and gave you the impression of the place and location you were in, so you could see that. The revolve was pushed around manually, so there wasn't an automatic revolve, which, one of my biggest bugbears is if you've got techs moving the revolve round, it would have been better not to see headsets and LEDs flashing in people's pockets when you're pushing a revolve round, because there was times when you could see them actually being involved in the tech, because it didn't actually go to a dark black stage. You just saw these techs pushing the staging round, whereas if they'd have been in some form of costume or some form of linked costume to who else was on stage, it might have helped. If one side would have been the person that was in the 50s to somebody in 2053, you could have made more of that.
Well, what about the village people that started singing at the end of at the dance at the beginning?
Yeah, it's using people on stage that would have made more sense than being the techs, because that's what they needed to do.
And there was a piano player, a keyboard player, wasn't there, playing a song as well in one segment?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, that was for the 2013 scene, really, just to almost show another reopening of the hall. So there wasn't really anything majorly technical, I suppose.
Or was it the closing of the hall?
It was the.
Didn't they have to lock up?
Could be.
Yeah, I think it was a closing. I don't know. What I would say, technically speaking, is the probably reason why we're a bit hazy in this one. It's been 2 weeks since we've seen it, and on the way back, where we had a bit of a
broke down on the M25.
Someone didn't put a wheel wrench in their car, did they, Richard?
Can't remember everything in life.
They had everything else.
It just took, maybe 6 hours to get home, rather
From
than
the
2.5.
M25. There we go.
Yeah.
And now it's time for Rewind Rewatch.
Review, rewind, rewatch. What would you watch again?
I think it'd be the scene with Sid and Midge.
On the bridge.
Sid and Midge on the bridge. Yeah.
Although I don't think she wasn't. I think she was. Was it? I think it was Pixie on the bridge.
Okay, so Sid and Pixie on the bridge.
Sid and Pixie on the bridge.
It's got to be that scene, because
yes,
there was a lot of strength of power and performance from both characters, and it felt intense, and I think that was really well put together.
Yeah. To be honest, I'd agree. I did enjoy the 1953 segments a bit more.
Yeah.
Or did I? I'm not quite sure. I'd rewatch it to see that. But to be honest, even though I feel like I've slated this a little bit too much, I would like to see it reworked, and I would be open to see it again.
Yeah.
Because it's got something there.
It has, yeah.
And the actors were really good in it. They delivered really well.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
Okay, so to sum up with this particular piece, I thought it was engaging in parts. I thought it had a good, interesting plot and themes and dynamics of it. However, the script needs tightening up a great deal. I'd probably consider dropping out the 2013 segment to make it tighter and flesh out the characters and make their stories a little bit more stronger than what we had. But it was an interesting piece.
Yeah, I mean, it was a piece with promise. I think that it could have just had some work to reflect on the actual production as a whole, and not to almost feel that the audience need to see things repeated and to the fullest extent, and just stripped back a little bit and made tighter. And I think that's what I missed out of it. I think there were certain times when it could have just been paced a little bit better and just made into something a bit more snappy and almost get to the point a little quicker, because I feel like there was
like the point you're making now.
Yeah, the point I'm making now. I feel like we took a long journey, shall I say?
We did
to get there, literally, rather than not always using the short route, but just using the short and sweet route. And I think that's what it needed to make it a stronger piece of theatre.
So, Richard, scores now, please, for The Flood. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being gripped by the flood and 1 being left bobbing about with no life jacket, what are you going to give it?
I'll give this a 6 out of 10. Because I feel that there's promise there, but it needs work.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, this is a 6. A strong 6.
Yeah, definitely.
This is. Yeah. That 2013 segment needs cutting. It really does. It slows it down like a great big weight.
Yeah.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck. Tumbleweed. An audible shrug of the shoulders. A slow clap. A pleasant applause. Or a standing ovation. What will it be?
I'll give this a pleasant applause.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a pleasant applause as well, because it did deserve it.
So there we are. That's our discussion of the flood. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
And opinions.
on many theatrical delights in future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.
Are you receiving me?
Are you receiving me?
Hello? Is it me you're receiving now?
Yes.
This world premiere production of an extraordinarily... This world premiere production of an extraordinarily... Oh my god.
Do you mind? I've got to edit this.
Well...
January 1953. The storm approaches. The storm approaches a party. Swing dancing to a big band. No. Swing dancing to the big band.
Swing dancing is part of...
Dancing. Yeah, swing dancing.
It'd be better saying dancing swing to the big band.
Yeah. It starts in January 1953. The storm approaches a party. Dancing swing to the big band. Is that what we said?
Yeah, but you just said it's January 1953, where you need to put it's in with no, it's not there.
But is it swing dancing or dancing swing? What did you just say?
Dancing swing, I think.
January 1953. The storm approaches a party.
It should be Storm approaches a party.
The set shares the same set. No. The stage? No. What we see when we come into the auditorium.
And what was in this auditorium, Stephen? We met a lovely lady
Did we?
on the way into the production
Who was that?
who informed us that
Oh, yes, I
everything's a bit
forgot.
wordy.
Oh yes, that's right. I don't know, half a metre up. I did think I knew how to actually describe this set.
Steve, would you like me to describe this?
We can probably finish it off. Because of the mysteries in this, we didn't really know where it was going to. Have you finished taking your jacket off?
Jacket on?
Jacket on, jacket off?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good to go then, aren't
We're
we?
good to go.
Okay. Oh, sorry, was that costume change?
It was, yeah.
Was that
Sorry.
a costume change?
Just needed to get into something more uncomfortable.
Than my house.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Oh, sorry. My arms are too wide on this one. I'm taking up a lot of space. I'm sorry that this ball guy's getting in your way, Stephen. No.
Yeah. See, this is what happens when you chomp on ginger nuts.
That's it.
Too many
You can't
ginger
fit in
nuts
your,
in your
you
diet.
can't fit in your correct dresses.
Right, back to the flood.
Yeah, I suppose basically it was a mirror image set with the revolve where you could... Memorial Hall had been underwater in its flood and you were seeing the sort of change between the two, but it also helped change scenes throughout the production as well.
Yeah, so what I said.
You can use it if you want, you don't have to.
So I can use yours and just edit all mine out.
There were certain points where... I don't know, what was I going to say?
I don't know, but you've bored me.
I've completely bored myself. What the fuck?
Let me just... You have a think and I'll take over.
Well,
That's right, that's right.
that's right.